properties are worth, because I'd love to know, you know, what this person's property is worth and how it's going to affect, you know, my revaluation. Because not that I want my, you know, property to be worth a lot of money. It's just that when you have something in the neighborhood that it definitely pulls everybody else's property values down.
I agree.
I'm just curious about it.
Well, once the values are produced and as we are going around, I mean, we're not going to sit in front of a computer and say, well, I'm going to place a value on your property. We're going to be out in the field. We're not going to go in your home, but we'll be in front of your house looking at your house once these values are produced. And the process is that we'll go and look at all the sales first in your neighborhood, and then we'll go to your neighborhood with our sheet that you'll have copy of when you come in to see us on the free grievance, and then we will establish your value from there. So we'll see that if there's a problem with one of your neighbors' houses that they're collecting items that maybe shouldn't be there, we'll see that and we'll adjust your values accordingly. But in the meantime, if you feel something is not legal with one of your neighbors' properties, I would suggest that you contact maybe our building department so that Mr. Supervisor?
This is about as unique as you're going to find probably in your assessments around New York State. Kind of finds this in your book. This lady's exactly right. This person chasing her property down the street, who we've taken to court in this court right here. We've won. We've taken him to the Supreme Court, state. I'm sorry, over to the county, and we've won. He's currently suing us for a few $1 million and still in litigation. This thing is about as convoluted and as difficult as you're going to find. And I do feel badly for the neighbors, and we certainly do need to do everything in our power to ensure that this situation, we're going to proceed on with what we're doing, but in terms of their values and their property, it really needs to be looked at very, very carefully. But this is about as unique as you're going to find. And I don't know, I mean, our attorney's here from town. I don't think he's going to want to talk about it. He sits back kind of chuckling. But it is a very, very difficult case, and it's been going on way too long.
Does anyone else have any other questions they'd like to ask us?
This raises a question I was trying to figure out how to phrase, nibbling at the edges of. What about the situations that are, returning light for light, huh?
What's that for? Don't never sit down.
What about those circumstances that are legal, that are special situations where a property may be impaired? This is becoming more and more common, where you may have a commercial property, as I do. This is a personal issue with me, but there are a lot of situations like this, where you have a commercial property being impaired by wetlands that are creeping up on it. And you have what was formerly a viable piece of property, now it's becoming impaired. Or just a piece of vacant property that may be residential that's suddenly impaired. Or you may have, as there are people here from an area where, let's assume a developer has just received final approval to put up a rental development that's going to impair their property values in what was formerly a very scenic rural area. How's the process going to deal with that?
Well, I'll try to just, I'm not that familiar with Goshen yet. I'm sure I will be, but I'm going to give you an answer from 40 years of experience. As a good assessor or an appraiser or someone that teaches this, okay, like anything else in real estate appraisal, you got to measure something. Now, this apartment complex isn't even built yet.
Exactly.
Okay? I'm going to measure the sales. Let's assume it doesn't get built before July of 2011. I'm going to measure that neighborhood, the sales that have taken place, of these homes for the past 4 years. Okay? Easy terms again. The average selling price comes out to be $200,000. They build it. 2 years later, we come back, and now there's been 4 or 5 sales of those same homes, okay? 20% less. Then I could say...
But that's the easy part. What happens to the appraisal once the plans are stamped with final approval? Once the day that stamp goes on the plans, the value of the adjacent properties goes down.
If I was that good at putting values on stuff, I mean, I can probably agree with you theoretically, but what if the project, if I reduced all the values and the project didn't get built? I've seen situations up in Monroe County where they get these big grants and these tax abatements and IDA projects, and all of a sudden they don't get built. Okay? I mean, as an assessor, I have to measure things that I can defend. I mean, I can talk to you as an individual, or I can give a different lecture for a different reason, okay? But from an assessor's point of view, he's got to measure it at the time. In other words, I'm sure Joanne isn't going to be able to go in and say values within a 3-mile radius are going to go down 20%.
As those valuations.
But see, that's the beauty of having it where it's done every year as opposed to doing it once in 1998, where that project was approved and then it's never looked at again until 2010 or 2012. So I think that will roll as those things do occur, because changes always happen.
I mean, we did a project there when the town of Minden flooded there. You know, remember the flood 3 years ago, I guess? And we were able to actually measure the sales afterwards, because we did the readout after, but the 2 years before versus the 2 years after the flood. Well, obviously, properties that were flooded that the previous owner never fixed up, you know, someone was worth 80 grand and it got flooded, and then people were buying for 12,000. I mean, obviously, we knew the values were down, okay? But, I mean, these are these unique situations that you deal with. And it's tough enough to get the stuff right that we got data to work with, rather than try to see 2 or 3 years in the future what impact something like this apartment's going to have. And I mean that honestly.
Yeah,
it's tough enough to get the right current stuff right.
Yeah, just to add to that very briefly, I mean, I agree with Bob completely. The decisions that the assessor or the appraiser is making is really going to be sales driven. We can all have some thoughts as to how a specific situation may influence property value, but relative to the assessor or the appraiser's job in this instance, it's going to be driven by hard data which comes from the sales that have happened. And that's why there is an annual valuation date that's unique to every roll that's filed. And as this gentleman said, that's why it's really imperative that even if it's not done annually, that the assessments be realigned with market value periodically, so that these specific situations can be accounted for in the assessments and properly reflected, so that people who are affected by situations like that, or as Bob's example in Marlboro as resulting from 9/11, that those situations can be reflected accurately in the assessment roll. And but for the act of reassessment, they won't be.
All right. Well, I want to thank, are there any other questions? I want to thank everyone for coming, and I want to thank all of my speakers for coming, the state, and the county, and obviously our consultant, town board. Thank you for allowing me to go ahead with this.
Yes.